woods behind the school just after midnight last night. The 24-year-old teacher was reported missing after she didn't come home from work yesterday.
There is a school in Danvers, Massachusetts, where more than 140 surveillance cameras watch every hallway, stairwell, and corridor. On October 22nd, 2013, every single one of them was working. That afternoon, a 24-year-old algebra teacher stayed behind to help one of her students. Both of them later went missing. So how does a crowded school in broad daylight, with over 140 working cameras, fail to protect one person? The answer is far more disturbing than a failure of security. Colleen Ritzer grew up in Andover, Massachusetts, a quiet town about 15 miles north of Boston. Oldest of 3 children. Her parents Tom and Peggy, her younger siblings Daniel and Laura. Everyone who knew the Ritzer family says the same thing about them. It was close. It was warm. Family wasn't something they talked about. It was something they practiced every single day. Colleen knew she wanted to teach before she knew much else about herself. She graduated high school in 2007, went to Assumption College in Worcester, finished magna cum laude in mathematics and psychology, and was already enrolled in a master's program in school counseling by the time she took her first teaching job. She taught 8th grade math at Hale Middle School before joining the faculty at Danvers High School in the fall of 2012. She was in her second year there when October 2013 arrived, still living at home to save money. Still as passionate about her students as she had been on her very first day. Her Twitter handle was at Ms. Ritzer Math. Her bio read, "Math teacher often too excited about the topics I'm teaching." She tweeted puzzles for her students to solve, links to review packets, encouragement before exams. To read it now is to understand something important about who Colleen Ritzer was. She was not performing enthusiasm. She simply had it. Naturally, effortlessly, completely. Students who had always struggled with mathematics, who had given up on it long before they ever sat in her classroom, would say later that Colleen was the first teacher who made them feel like understanding it was actually possible. She would sit with them. She would find the specific explanation that worked for that specific student. She never once made anyone feel foolish for not knowing something. She started each class with a quote. She kept a folder of them, things she genuinely believed. In August 2013, she posted one to Twitter, a Taylor Swift quote she had written down and carried with her. "No matter what happens in life, be good to people." Being good to people is a wonderful legacy to leave behind. Philip Chisholm was born January 21, 1999, in Clarksville, Tennessee, oldest of 3 children. His father, Stacy, was a veteran of the Tennessee Army National Guard. His mother, Diana, was born in Brazil. By most accounts, his early childhood was fractured. His parents' marriage collapsed across more than a decade. Filings, reconciliations, more filings, with court records referencing allegations that from her. Tom Ritzer had already driven to the school himself. He had walked the perimeter. He had seen his daughter's car still sitting in the parking lot exactly where she had left it that morning. He had looked around the building and seen no sign of her. And then, not knowing what else to do, he had driven home. The teacher who had relayed the message to the principal made one more observation that stopped everyone cold. Philip Chisholm had been in Colleen Ritzer's last class that day. He was the last known student seen with her. And now, on the same evening, both of them were missing. It was too coincidental to ignore. The principal and several teachers went back to the school to search. They found Colleen's classroom exactly as she had left it. Her belongings were gone. Her car was still outside. There was no sign of either of them anywhere in the building. At 11:20 p.m., Tom and Peggy Ritzer officially reported their daughter missing to the Danvers police. Detectives immediately contacted Colleen's cell phone provider and requested a location ping. Her phone's last known signal placed it around 24 minutes away, on foot from Danvers High School. They pinged Philip's phone next, his traced to a nearby movie theatre called Hollywood Hits. Officers rushed to the theatre. When they arrived, Philip Chisholm was no longer there. Searches were now underway in and around the school. And within a short time, investigators made a discovery that shifted everything. Colleen Ritzer's purse had been found in the surrounding area. It was empty. Her cards and her identification were gone. Then a search of the school building itself turned up something far more disturbing. Station, where he was later joined by his mother. His demeanor shifted noticeably when she arrived. He asked to speak with officers without her present. While he was being questioned, a state police search team moved into the woods behind Danvers High School. They worked through the darkness with flashlights and a K9 unit. Shortly before 3 a.m., they found her. Colleen Ritzer's body was in the wooded area behind the school. She had been stabbed, strangled, and violated. She was partially clothed. She had been covered with sticks and leaves. Next to her body was a handwritten note. It said, "I hate you all." About 20 yards away was the large green recycling bin that had been used to move her.
14-year-old high school student has been charged with killing a teacher in the eastern part of the state.
Philip Chisholm was ordered held without bail at his murder arraignment in adult court in Salem today. Police said the teen killed Danvers high school math teacher Colleen Ritzer, whose body was found in the woods behind the school just after midnight last night. The 24-year-old teacher was reported missing after she didn't come home from work yesterday. Investigators found blood in a second-floor school bathroom and located her body soon after.
I can say that she was a very, very respected, loved teacher. And at 24 years of age, as I said, it's a terrible tragedy for the entire Danvers community.
Teenage suspect was reported missing yesterday afternoon when he failed to come home from school. Police found him walking along a highway early this morning. As we said, he was ordered held without bail today, pending a hearing in November. Chisholm had recently moved to Massachusetts from Tennessee. He was a top goal scorer on the school soccer team.
In the days that followed, investigators began the painstaking work of analyzing the school's surveillance footage. And what those cameras revealed told a story that was even more chilling than anyone had imagined. The cameras captured Colleen walking down the hallway toward the second-floor bathroom just before 3 p.m. She was smiling. She was waving to someone as she walked. 1 minute later, the cameras captured Philip Chisholm entering the same hallway. His hood was up. He had put on gloves. He walked directly toward the bathroom and followed her inside. At 3:06 p.m., a female student entered the same bathroom. She told investigators she saw the back of a person who appeared to be changing clothes. The person's clothing was piled on the floor. Not wanting to disturb whoever it was, she turned and left immediately. What she had walked in on was something far worse than she could have imagined. Inside that bathroom, Philip Chisholm had strangled Colleen, stabbed her 16 times with a box cutter, and raped her. 3 of those stab wounds severed major blood vessels. 1 wound was so deep it chipped a vertebra. At 3:14 p.m., he pulled a large green recycling bin into the bathroom. He placed her body inside it. At 3:22 p.m., he emerged wearing a black ski mask, dragging the bin behind him. He moved it through the building, through a lift, across the student parking lot. And into the woods behind the school, where he left her body on the ground, partially clothed and covered with sticks and leaves. He returned to the school building shortly after, barefoot, with blood visible on his jeans. He changed his clothes. He walked back through the hallways one final time, and then he left. He went straight to the cinema and purchased a ticket to a 4:30 p.m. film showing. He left around 6 p.m. and then used Colleen's credit card at a nearby Wendy's. He shoplifted a knife from a wholesale store nearby. And then somewhere after dark, he began walking north along Route 1. The medical examiner who performed the autopsy testified that both the asphyxiation and the stab wounds were independently lethal. She could not say with certainty which had killed Colleen first. She combined both as a single hybrid cause of death. Medical examiners believed Colleen may still have been alive when Philip dragged her body into the woods.
So, asphyxia by strangulation as well as the sharp force injuries are both lethal in their own right and separately. I couldn't be certain, again, we talked about the sequence with which injuries occur. I couldn't be certain whether the asphyxia occurred and then the decedent lived through that episode. Therefore, I combined them as essentially a hybrid cause of death.
Something else emerged in the weeks and months that followed. Something that generated its own investigation and ultimately its own lawsuit. Those 140 cameras installed throughout Danvers High School as part of an $80 million renovation, the system that was supposed to make the school one of the most monitored in the region, had not been working properly for nearly a year before the murder. Internal emails obtained during a later wrongful death lawsuit told the real story. In November 2012, the assistant principal had flagged serious failures in the system. A contractor told colleagues he had never seen a worse software package in his career. And in September 2013, just 1 month before Colleen Ritzer was killed, the assistant principal sent an email stating the system was down completely. A fix was not implemented until November 2013, after the murder. There was something else. The bathroom where Colleen died had been cleaned before investigators fully processed the scene. A custodial crew, through a miscommunication with supervisors, had disinfected it. Evidence was lost before it could be collected. The 4-day surveillance reconstruction that detectives completed was painstaking manual work. Still images pieced together frame by frame. The system meant to protect students and staff had not been functioning, and in the most critical location in the building, on the most critical afternoon, it could not see anything at all. The Ritzer family filed a wrongful death lawsuit in 2016, targeting the architectural firm responsible for designing the security system. Philip Chisholm was charged with first-degree murder, aggravated rape, and armed robbery. Under Massachusetts law, any juvenile 14 or older charged with murder is automatically tried as an adult. No judge can intervene. No discretion is permitted.
Homicide this afternoon. A Massachusetts teenager was arraigned on charges that he robbed, raped, and murdered his high school math teacher. Eyewitness News anchor Shannon Heggie joins us now live with the developing details.
Mike, 14-year-old Philip Chisholm said next to nothing during today's arraignment, except to plead not guilty to murdering 24-year-old Colleen Ritzer.
Let's take it straight to this indictment. Guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Those were the only words to come out of the mouth of Philip Chisholm at Salem Superior Court. The 14-year-old is charged with...
He was 16 by the time the trial began in November 2015. The defense did not dispute that Philip Chisholm had killed Colleen Ritzer. What they argued was that he should not be held criminally responsible, that he had been suffering from early-onset schizophrenia, that the word Tennessee had triggered a full psychotic break, and that he had been acting under the influence of command hallucinations, a voice in his mind he had been hearing since he was 10 years old, one that was too strong and compelling to resist. 3 defense psychiatrists testified in support of this. They pointed to his family history, a grandmother who had received electroshock therapy in the 1970s, an aunt who had cycled repeatedly in and out of psychiatric facilities. They argued that uprooting a psychologically fragile teenager from everything and everyone he had ever known, without any support system in place, had been the breaking point. The prosecution argued something entirely different. They said Philip Chisholm had come to school that morning with a plan. His backpack contained a box cutter, a ski mask, gloves, and multiple changes of clothing. He had brought all of it from home, before the final bell rang, before any classroom conversation, before Colleen Ritzer said a single word to him. And after the murder, they argued his behavior was not the scattered, disoriented behavior of a person experiencing a psychotic break. He had gone to a movie. He had used a stolen credit card. He had changed his clothes. He had not panicked. He had not fled. He had calculated every step.
So what is this case about? This case is about why did this happen? Why did a 14-year-old boy, well-behaved, quiet, 1 month into high school, do these terrible things? The answer is he was severely mentally ill. He had been suffering from a psychotic disorder since the age of 10.
Now, at the end of his stay in 2015, did you reach a diagnosis for Philip Chisholm?
I did.
And what was that diagnosis?
I made 2 diagnoses. One was a depressive state, best described in my view as a major depressive state, and another was a brief or transient psychotic episode.
Now, in forming your diagnosis, what did you rely on?
I relied on my clinical observations, the observations of the clinical team, I had available to me 2 psychological reports from done early in the.
The prosecution's expert psychologist testified that Chisholm's performance on multiple standardized psychological assessments showed unmistakable indicators of malingering. He was deliberately exaggerating the severity of his mental illness. One test came back 100% positive that he was faking.
Dr. Hebben, what were the results of Philip Chisholm's MMPI for adolescents?
The results suggested that it was likely invalid because his F-K scale was excessively elevated and suggested that he was attempting to fake bad and to demonstrate that he was severely mentally ill.
He was attempting to demonstrate that he was severely mentally ill. Is that correct?
Correct.
The jury deliberated for approximately 10 hours.
Interviewed Philip Chisholm on a number of occasions between July and October 3rd of this year for a total of approximately 13 hours. I'm first looking for whether or not there is evidence of a mental disease or defect as it's understood under the law. I then look to see whether or not, if there was a mental disease or defect, there is evidence that the defendant was substantially impaired in their ability to either appreciate the wrongfulness or criminality of their act or to conform their conduct to the requirements of law. So I'm essentially marching through the legal standard, trying to put the information and evidence that I have into this kind of logical progression.
And with respect to whether Philip Chisholm was suffering a mental disease or defect on October 22nd of 2013, did you reach an opinion to a reasonable degree of psychological certainty?
I did.
What was that opinion?
My opinion is that on the date of the alleged offense, Mr. Chisholm was not suffering from a mental disease or defect.
And did you reach an opinion to a reasonable degree of psychological certainty as to whether he understood the wrongfulness of his conduct and could conform his conduct to the requirements of the law?
I did reach an opinion onto that.
What was that opinion?
My opinion was that although Mr. Chisholm at the time may have been showing some indications of distress or emotional disturbance, that to the extent to which they were present, they did not substantially impair his capacity to distinguish the wrongfulness or criminality of his act, to identify that, nor did it substantially impair his ability to.
During those 10 hours, the only question the jury had was about the second rape charge. They asked the judge to clarify the law on that specific count. They returned guilty verdicts on first-degree murder under both available theories: deliberate premeditation and extreme atrocity and cruelty, guilty on aggravated rape, guilty on armed robbery. On one count only they acquitted him. The second rape charge related to what occurred in the woods after Colleen was moved. The reason was precise and technical. Massachusetts law requires a living victim to secure a rape conviction. The medical examiner could not say with absolute certainty that Colleen was still alive at that point. Given the legal standard of reasonable doubt, the jury acquitted on that count alone.
At the beginning of this case, it's not in question who did these terrible acts. And the evidence has borne me out. The defense acknowledges the enormity of this task and thanks you for your commitment to this. The evidence is clear that Philip Chisholm has suffered from a psychotic disorder, most likely early onset schizophrenia, from the time he was young. Now, what's the evidence of that? Well, first you have the testimony of 3 experienced psychiatrists.
Gentlemen, the terrible, horrible event of October 22nd, 2013 didn't unfold in a screen capture. They didn't unfold in a still image. They happened in real time, in real life, in a place at a time, at Danvers High School, in the middle of what should have been a normal day, in the middle of the afternoon. And make no mistake, they didn't happen to Philip Chisholm. He did these terrible things to Colleen Ritzer, and she was only 24 years old. And the only still image that matters in this case is the image of Colleen in the woods. The image that the defendant painted of Colleen stripped, battered, brutalized, and violated.
Massachusetts had no statute at the time against the desecration of a body. The law said what it said. On December 24, 2013, just 2 months after Colleen Ritzer was murdered, the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court issued a landmark ruling. It was not about Philip Chisholm's case, it was about another juvenile entirely. But its effect on the Ritzer case was absolute. The court ruled that sentencing any juvenile to life without the possibility of parole was unconstitutional under the Massachusetts Declaration of Rights. The reasoning was grounded in brain science and in principle. The developing adolescent mind cannot be determined at any given moment to be permanently and irretrievably beyond the possibility of change. No judge, the court said, can look at a 14-year-old and know with certainty that they will never be different than they are right now. It was a ruling designed to protect children, and it applied directly to the child who had killed Colleen Ritzer. When Judge David Lowy sentenced Chisholm in February 2016, he was constitutionally prohibited from giving the Ritzer family what they had asked for. He imposed the mandatory life sentence for murder and set a parole eligibility date of 25 years, the highest level the law allows. He then imposed concurrent 40 years to 40 years in one day for the rape of Colleen Ritzer, and a concurrent sentence of 40 years to 40 years in one day for the armed robbery. Because of these concurrent sentences, Chisholm will not actually be able to apply for parole until he is in his 50s. From the bench, Judge Lowy said, "Colleen Ritzer lived a life of quiet heroism. That is what most teachers do. And even if the defendant were to live a perfect life from this moment on, his repeated stab wounds to Colleen Ritzer's young body will remain indelible until the last person who knew Colleen Ritzer takes his or her last breath." 9 victim impact statements were delivered that day. Peggy Ritzer called Philip Chisholm pure evil and said that evil could never be rehabilitated. Her son Daniel said the family wanted this man behind bars for the rest of his life.
Terrible happens, people will often say it could always be worse. It is difficult for this court to imagine what could be worse for an individual or a family to endure than the brutal and senseless murder of Colleen Ritzer. Colleen Ritzer lived a life of quiet heroism. That's what most teachers do. Henry Adams observed that a teacher affects eternity. She can never tell where her influence stops. Colleen Ritzer's parents, more than most, have learned the reach of their daughter's influence, but at a cost no parent should have to endure. While the extent or lack of extent of the defendant's mental health was the subject of exhaustive testimony at trial, the Commonwealth presented overwhelming evidence that the defendant had substantial capacity to appreciate the wrongfulness of his conduct and had the substantial capacity to conform his conduct to the requirements of the law. I will punish the defendant for the murder of Colleen Ritzer, and I will punish him for the rape as well as the armed robbery of the underpants she put on the morning of her death. But I may not utilize the horrific rape and robbery of Colleen Ritzer to punish the defendant for this unspeakable murder more than the law allows. This court will impose the mandatory life sentence for the murder of Colleen Ritzer and set a parole eligibility date of 25 years, the highest level our law allows. This court will impose a concurrent sentence of 40 years to 40 years in one day for the rape of Colleen Ritzer and a concurrent sentence of 40 years to 40 years in one day for the armed robbery. In imposing a sentence for the rape at a date in excess of the parole eligibility date for the murder, the court is not suggesting that the rape, as heinous as it was more egregious than the murder. Rather, this court is constitutionally obligated to set a parole date no more than 25 years for her murder. While Colleen Ritzer's rape and murder were inextricably intertwined, this court may not punish the defendant with more prison time for the rape than justice demands for the purposes of avoiding constitutional limitations imposed by our Massachusetts Declaration of Rights, as interpreted by a Supreme Judicial Court for the murder committed by a juvenile. Sentence may be imposed.
And Tom Ritzer stood before the courtroom and said the thing that no verdict and no sentence could address. A dad's job is to protect his family. I didn't protect Colleen. A dad's job is to fix things. I can't fix this. Philip Chisholm said nothing. Most of the people who attended that day wore pink. It was Colleen's favorite color. In February 2025, the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court upheld every conviction and confirmed the full sentence. Philip Chisholm cannot seek parole until he is 54 years old. On October 22, 2015, the second anniversary of Colleen's death, her closest friend Jen Berger launched the Kindness for Colleen campaign. The idea was simple. On that date, each year, do something kind for someone else and share it online. The hashtag spread further than anyone expected because the idea at its center was larger than anyone expected. That a life defined by generosity deserves a memorial built from generosity. The Colleen E. Ritzer Memorial Fund was established by her family to send future teachers to college. Since October 2013, it has awarded over $370,000 in college scholarships to 82 future teachers. Recipients must demonstrate a passion for teaching, academic excellence, and love of family. In 2023, on the 10th anniversary of her death, Danvers High School officially dedicated its library to Colleen Ritzer's memory. The bathroom where she was killed has been closed since October 2013. Over 1,000 people turned out to pay their respects at Colleen's funeral, and hundreds of students and teachers participated in numerous vigils and community events to celebrate her life. A teacher affects eternity. She can never tell where her influence stops. Thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe and turn on your notification bell so you won't miss our next case.